So this section, I have all my menus laid out, but the windmill I just placed on top of these graphics that I have for some reference. And on these reference files, the picture that I had taken, these are a little different. This actually has a hub that you can go up inside. If you've ever been to the fairgrounds, you can travel into this, but this section that you see inside of here, you can climb up inside the stanchion here and get up into the top of it. So whether you design it with that way, but I've placed a couple of graphics that I've just wanted to try to get the circular part. This circular part still shows up on the front of this propeller. And when you get it set up, I'm just going to demonstrate the blade itself with the stanchion to help it, and then any of the graphics that you put below it, trying to get you to create some of your own parts and pieces. So I have this selection, and all this part is just a couple of pieces, and I've grouped this together, so I will see if I can select all of these. Object, selection. How do I do that? Okay, so this part that you see is just a fan blade. I've grouped it together and placed it on there. So this is what was connected to it. So as it gets into the isolation mode into that section, I'll try to do it off to the side here. Just move this guy over a little bit. Okay. So here's the fan blade that comes across. Scooch him over a little bit, not too much. Okay. And you can set up some ruler guides. I made a circular part for the selection inside the middle, and getting a couple of ruler guides for the center just to keep it centered. And I tried to offset it so that I have two shapes that I could then use the shape builder on and just do the option and delete that. So that makes these two elements that you can change with swatches, for example. So it gives you a little bit more of a shaded piece. And that'll come into play a little bit more inside. This part is a silhouette, so everything would be dark, but just to try to get you organized into that. So depending on how you want the blade to interact with this part, I have the rotation tool right in the center, just option and click, and I'll retype this in, but it's 360 just divided by 3, unless you can do the math right away, and just hit copy and Command D for duplicate. So essentially that's all that part was. And then for the stanchion, which is coming down, I'll make a shorter one just to simplify it. And here's the gradient that you can set across. So it gives you a little bit of a piece. The gradient will finish later, but that's not going all the way to the top. And just send it backward. And with this center piece, just shift key and group it together. So this element is grouped together and brought into the front. And the three fan blades are grouped together. So now you have these three pieces. So if you select them all, that's what you're taking into the to the piece for this part. So when I take a look, this is what I have on the first one. So I'll just copy that and go into this animate. So here I've just pasted it in there just to get the mechanics working so that you can see where you're headed and hitting the return. This is just the blades rotating one time as a symbol, edited in a animation of their own. The front piece was separate so that I could have it stationary, otherwise it would spin along with it. So that's all this part is. It's not too difficult. Just go to File, New, and try to get in the habit of just doing the Action Script 3 for starters. Place that in there, and when I paste this in, it'll give me all the options for using the layers, and you can see it's relatively large. So I'll just shrink it down a bit here. Here's that piece. So once I click off, I can get into the staging area and just give it a lighter color for that. Actually, I'm going to go with the blue. So there's your image, and it's come across. It's one piece. And very similar, some of the changes have come where you can break this apart if you ungroup it as well. You can see that this is a piece, and you can ungroup that part. So now these three parts. So I'm going to shift key these three and go to modify and group them. Had I grouped them before, that would have been the style. So this and the stanchion are separate pieces. So why this is highlighted, this is where you go and convert it to a symbol. And hit that in there, so now it's on this fan blade action. So I can approximate that middle. So I'm just going to double click. This puts it in its own layer. For now I'm just going to put white in there. But here's the selection. And here's the part. So I'm just going to make it about a 5 frame animation. Insert a keyframe, and right in the middle of this, I'll make this a little bit larger. 5 seconds. Put in a classic tween in between here, and it'll say OK. So in between here and this part, it'll open up this path for rotation, and I'll just put clockwise on this. So when you see it, kind of jumps around. If I use the comma and the plus, you see it's kind of rotating within itself, only because the center of rotation is a little bit different. So I'm just going to click on the first frame and move that to the middle. Click on the last frame and also place that in the middle. So now it rotates just on its own there. So I just go back into the scene. This is the operation. Let's see if I just do a keyframe here, and now hit return, and now it's rotating on its own without that piece. It has a 10-second frame, and depending on how many you put in there, there were 5, but as you have to kind of judge the animation as it goes. So I had it go from start and spinning one time in 5 frames, so that it has the little loop on the end. So depending on the math of the frames that you place that in there, and that'll give